I had a concurrent proposal for legislation to put historical women, American women on our quarters. So believe it or not, as I mentioned, to change our currency, it's the Secretary of the Treasury by law, not the president, not Congress. To change the design of our coins is literally an act of Congress. Believe it or not, that's just the way it is. So obviously, when I proposed it, there was still a very big legislative process in front of us. And so that happened to be that the state quarter program was already in place, honoring our national parks, was going to finish in 2020. Again, perfect timing, right? So this proposal to put historical American women on our quarters was a new program that would follow right in time in 2020 for what was happening with the end of the current state quarter program. So it took a while, and obviously there were changes along the way in terms of decision making. But yes, finally, in 2020, the Circulating Coin Act honoring historical American women was approved. And as you've probably heard, the first person that was honored in January for the first release of the quarter, it was Maya Angelou, which is so, I know why the cage bird sings resonates with me in so many ways. And that is actually she is actually the first African-American person ever in the history of our country to be honored on our coin or currency. So I have one with me. So here it is. You might not have seen it yet, but there it is. It is.
I've been looking for it. Look at that. How do we order those? How do we get them?
Very hard to find in the wild, that's for sure. That they have been released to the banks. So hopefully your banks will get them soon. I know they're really still hard to find. And actually, even the Sally Ride quarters were released in March, and they're making their way as well. But they're really, really hard to get. I was very fortunate. I was invited to a ceremony on February 1st to present the Maya Angelou quarter to members of Congress. So of course, I was there. And most recently, the end of March, Speaker Pelosi, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who has been my champion on this for so long, almost 6 years it took us to pass this legislation. I was not going to give up anytime soon. Speaker Pelosi hosted an event in San Francisco because, of course, Maya Angelou has roots there. And so it was just wonderful. And of course, I brought my daughter. I had to bring my daughter. So, she's 21 years old. She's going to rule the world. But how fabulous is this, that she gets to participate in these activities with me. And that's what makes it all worthwhile. It is not about me. It is absolutely about her.
All right. Well, I'm so choked up hearing you talk about this. I can only imagine what it's like for your daughter to see you and to be part of this and to see your courage and your commitment and your fortitude. I mean, you really worked it and made it happen for all of us.
Thank you. I got to tell you one more story about her, which was really great. So she joined me when the first female statue was unveiled at Central Park on August 26, 2020. I had this very strong statue initiative that's alive and well, but she was with me. And actually, we were sitting near Secretary Clinton, Hillary Clinton. It's amazing. And so, of course, she got a chance to meet her. And it was just wonderful to to be part of that. It was a very small group because obviously it was during COVID, but that was August 26, 2020 is the day of the suffrage centennial. So what better way to spend it than to be there in Central Park, New York, obviously, one of the most visited parks in the world. And I remember when they unveiled it and she whispered in my ear, "I can't wait to come back and bring my kids and say that I was here to see this." Oh. So that, you can't
Pelosi to tell you that. Isn't that crazy?
You can't buy those moments. You can't even dream of those moments. And so for me, it's not over. It is not over by far. And people always ask me, when are you going to be done? And I always say the same thing. I'm done when we don't have to talk about this anymore. I'm done when women are no longer the novelty, but the norm, that it becomes part of our day-to-day experience, that what you see all around us reflects who we are as a country. That's when I'll stop. Hopefully soon.
You're such an inspiration. I certainly hope so. Well, your courage and fortitude clearly have moved mountains. So can you tell us like that moment when you kind of knew that this was the turning point and it was going to happen? What was that about and how'd you get there?
Yeah, I would say when I knew that I had something real here, there were a couple of hints along the way. So first and foremost was really again, our chief of staff, Mark Patterson, really being my champion on the currency redesign, it would not have happened without him. And obviously he was very instrumental in kind of playing devil's advocate in terms of what we needed to do before, obviously, we made the grand presentation to Secretary Geithner in 2012. And so, it took us a good 4 years to tee this up because, again, I wanted to follow a very specific process to make sure that I could address every anticipated no along the way and make sure that it was just tight. That was a lot of due diligence along the way. But I also want to kind of test the waters a little bit. So again, first there was Mark Patterson, boom. That's kind of the first one again. And then he believed in this and he was taking this journey with me. The second kind of moment that I knew I was onto something is when I went to Secretary Geithner in January of 2010. So we're still in the midst of this. It's still a covert project. And
the world was still shaking from the downturn. We weren't over.
Exactly. And obviously had a lot of other things to work on as well. So I went to him in January 2010 because I was the first woman confirmed in Treasury during the Obama administration. I was the only woman confirmed in Treasury in all of 2009 during one of the most consequential times of our economic history. So I had a meeting with Secretary Geithner. I was part of the senior staff. I was part of his morning meetings. And we had a one-on-one meeting. And I said to him in January of 2010, I said, Tim, you realize I'm still the only woman here in Treasury. And he said, absolutely. And I'm working on it. And he was very committed, very, very committed to that. I said, well, this coming March of 2010 is the 30th anniversary of Women's History Month. I said, do you realize that 4 of the 6 economic decision makers in the administration are women? He said, what do you mean? I said, there's Sheila Bair at the FDIC, Christina Romer at the Council of Economic Advisors, Mary Shapiro at the SEC, Elizabeth Warren at the time was the head of the Congressional Oversight Panel, and obviously eventually the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I said, the only ones you're missing out of that group are you and Larry Summers at the NEC. And I said, if I had my druthers, I said, I would love to have an event in March that talked about what these leaders are doing in leading the economic recovery. I said, we'd have it in March as part of Women's History Month, but obviously these are human beings who are talking about their role in the economic recovery. And I said, that would be panel 1, is the administration leaders. I said, panel 2 would be the female pioneers of Wall Street, Abby Joseph Cohen, Ruth Perot, et cetera. And again, talking about what they're doing in the public sector and the private sector. And, when I explained to him, his first response, immediate response, is how can I help? I mean, you can't even make that up, right? So I put a proposal together. We all agreed we're moving forward. And by the way, every single one of those women accepted my invitation. These are women who you would never see, and still today, don't speak at women's conferences. And I'm assuming that the reason why they accepted this invitation is because we weren't going to talk about work-life balance. We weren't going to talk about having it all. We're going to talk about, again, one of the most significant times of our economic history and what these leaders are doing to lead the way out of this. And I'll never forget, this was kind of another aha moment. When I was briefing Tim, the event was on a Monday. I was briefing him on the Friday before the event because he was hosting. He was literally hosting this event. And he stopped me in the middle of the briefing on this Friday. And he said, my daughter Elise is in town this weekend. She was an undergrad at Stanford at the time. She's in town this weekend. I wonder if I can get her to change her flight so she can stay for this event on Monday. How wonderful is that? That he realized the importance of having his daughter be inspired, again, by these leaders, taking the economy by the reins. And so that's when I realized I'm onto something. And then that event, so we did it. It was fabulous. That was March of 2010. But in May of 2010, 2 months later, that became the cover of Time magazine.